tam sajivam sadvaitam savarutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasinubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can read from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text number 16. Yes. All right, text 16, chapter 8, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuya pashyati akritha buddhitvan na sapashyati dormatihi. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. Text 17. Yasya nahan krito bhavo buddhiryasya nalipyate Tatvapi sa ima lokan nahanti nibidyate. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, is not the slayer, nor is he bound by his actions. Text 18. Jnanam gyayam parigyata trividha karma chodana karanam karma karteti Trividha karma sangraha. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the 3 factors which motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer comprise the threefold basis of action. Text 19. Jnanam karma chakartacha tutaiva guna bedataha ochite guna sankyane yathapachrinutanyapi. In accordance with the 3 modes of material nature, there are 3 kinds of knowledge, action, and performers of action. Listen as I describe them. Text 20. Sarva bhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayam ikshyate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajnanam vidhi satvikam. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences. Undivided, in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Text 21. Pritaktvena tuyas jnanam nana bhavan pritag pithan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tajnanam vidhi rajasam. That knowledge by which a different type of living entity is seen to be dwelling in different bodies is knowledge in the mode of passion. Text 22. Yattu kritsnavad ekasmin karye sakta mahaitukam atatvartavad alpamcha tattamasam utaritam. And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. 23. Niyatam sangha rahitam araga deshatagritam apala prepsuna karma yat tat satvikam uchyate. As for actions, that action in accordance with duty, which is performed without attachment, without love or hate, by one who has renounced fruits of results, is called action in the mode of goodness. Text 24. Yat tu kame psuna karma sahankarena babunaha priyate bahulayasam tadrajasam utaritam. But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires, and which is enacted from a sense of false ego, is called action in the mode of passion. Text 25. Anubandham kshayam himsam anapeksha chaporasham mohad arabhyate karma yatattamasam uchyate. And that action performed in ignorance and delusion, without consideration of future bondage or consequences, which inflicts injury and is impractical, is said to be action in the mode of ignorance. Text 26. Mukta sango nahambari dhrityutsaha samanditaha siddhya siddhyor nirvikara kartha sattvika uchyate. The worker who is free from all material attachments and false ego, who is enthusiastic and resolute, and who is indifferent to success or failure, is a worker in the mode of goodness. Okay, we'll go back to text 16. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Tathaivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuyaha pashyatyakrita purhidvan nasa pashyati dharmatihi. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the five factors, is certainly not very intelligent. It cannot see things as they are. Purport. A foolish person cannot understand that the Supersoul is sitting as a friend within in conducting his actions. Although the material causes are the place, the worker, the endeavor, and the senses, the final cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one should see not only the four material causes, but the Supreme Efficient Cause as well. One who does not see the Supreme thinks himself to be the instrument. Text 17. Yasya nahan krito bhavo buddhir yasya nalipyate atvapisa ima lokan nahanti na nibidyate. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, is not the slayer, nor is he bound by his actions. Purport. In this verse, the Lord informs Arjuna that the desire not to fight arises from false ego. Arjuna thought that himself to be the doer of action, but he did not consider the supreme sanction within and without. If one does not know that a super sanction is there, why should he act? But one who knows the instrument of work, himself as the worker, and the Supreme Lord as the supreme sanctioner, is perfect in doing everything. Such a person is never in illusion. Personal activity and responsibility arise from false ego and godlessness, or a lack of Krishna consciousness. That's a good sentence. Personal activity and responsibility arise from false ego and godlessness, or a lack of Krishna consciousness. Anyone who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the Supersoul or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though killing, does not kill, nor is he ever affected with the reaction of such killing. When a soldier kills under the command of a superior officer, he is not subject to be judged. But if a soldier kills on his own personal account, then he is certainly judged by a court of law. Text 18. Jnanam geyam parigyata trividha karma chodana Karanam karma karteti tri vidha karma sangraha. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the three factors which motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer comprise the threefold basis of action. Purport. There are three kinds of impetus for daily work: knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower. The instruments of work, the work itself, and the worker are called the constituents of work. Any work done by any human being has these elements. Before one acts, there is some impetus, which is called inspiration. Any solution arrived at before work is actualized is a subtle form of work. Then work takes the form of action. First, one has to undergo the psychological process of thinking, feeling, and willing, and that is called impetus. Actually, the faith to perform acts is called knowledge. The faith to perform acts is called knowledge. The inspiration to work is the same if it comes from the scripture or from the instruction of the spiritual master. When the inspiration is there, the worker is there. Then actual activity takes place by the help of the senses. The mind is the center of all senses, and the object is work itself. These are the different phases of work as described in Bhagavad Gita. The sum total of all activities is called accumulation of work. 19. Jnanam karma cha kartha cha tathaiva guna bedataha prochite guna sankyane yathavat srinutanyapi. In accordance with the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge, action, and performers of action. Listen as I describe them. Purport. In the 14th chapter, the three divisions of the modes of material nature were elaborately described. In that chapter, it was said that the mode of goodness is illuminating, the mode of passion materialistic, and the mode of ignorance conducive to laziness and indolence. All the modes of material nature are binding. They are not sources of liberation. Even in the mode of goodness, one is conditioned. In the 17th chapter, the different types of worship by different types of men and different modes of material nature were described. In this verse, the Lord wishes to speak about the different types of knowledge, workers, and work itself according to the three material modes. Text 20. Sarva bhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayam ikshite avibhaktam vibhakteshu tasjnanam vidhi sattvikam. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Purport. A person who sees one spirit soul in every living being, whether a demigod, human being, animal, bird, beast, aquatic, or plant, possesses knowledge in the mode of goodness. In all living entities, one spirit soul is there, although they have different bodies in terms of their previous work. As described in the 7th chapter, the manifestation of the living force in every body is due to the superior nature of the Supreme Lord. Thus, to see that one superior nature, that living force in every body, is to see in the mode of goodness. That living energy is imperishable, although the bodies are perishable. The difference is perceived in terms of the body because there are many forms of material existence and conditional life. Therefore, they appear to be divided. Such impersonal knowledge finally leads to self-realization. Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Text 21. Prithaktvena tu yajnanam nana bhavan pratagvitan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tasjnanam vidhi rajasam. That knowledge by which a different type of living entity is seen to be dwelling in different bodies is knowledge in the mode of passion. Purport. The concept that the material body is the living entity and that with the destruction of the body, the consciousness is also destroyed is called knowledge in the mode of passion. According to that knowledge, bodies differ from one another because of the development of different types of consciousness. Otherwise, there is no separate soul which manifests consciousness. The body is itself the soul, and there is no separate soul beyond this body. According to such knowledge, consciousness is temporary, or else there are no individual souls, but there is an all-pervading soul which is full of knowledge, and this body is a manifestation of temporary ignorance. Or beyond this body, there is no special individual or supreme soul. All such conceptions are considered products of the mode of passion. Text 22. Yattu kritsnavad ekasmin karye sakta mahaitukam atatvartavad alpamcha tatamasam udharitam. And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work is the all in all, without knowledge of truth, and which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. The knowledge of the common man is always in the mode of darkness or ignorance, because every living entity in conditional life is born into the mode of ignorance. One who does not develop knowledge through the authorities or scriptural injunctions has knowledge that is limited to the body. He is not concerned about acting in terms of the directions of scripture. For him, God is money, and knowledge means the satisfaction of bodily demands. Such knowledge has no connection with the absolute truth. It is more or less like the knowledge of the ordinary animals. The knowledge of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Such knowledge is described here as the product of the mode of darkness. In other words, knowledge concerning the spirit soul beyond this body is called knowledge in the mode of goodness. And knowledge producing many theories and doctrines by dint of mundane logic and mental speculation is the product of the mode of passion. And knowledge concerned only with keeping the body comfortable is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Text 23. Niyatam sangha rahitam aragateshatha kritam apalaprepsuna karma yatat satvikam uchite. As for actions, that action in accordance with duty which is performed without attachment, without love or hate, by one who has renounced fruits of results is called action in the mode of goodness. Purport. Regulated occupational duties as prescribed in the scriptures in terms of the different orders and divisions of society, performed without attachment or proprietary rights, and therefore without any love or hatred, and performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme, without self-satisfaction or self-gratification, are called actions in the mode of goodness. 24. Yattu kame psuna karma sahankarena vapunaha kriyate bahulaya sam tarajasam utaritam. But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires, and which is enacted from a sense of false ego, is called action in the mode of passion. Verse 25. Anubantam kshayam himsam anapekshya chapodasham mohad abrabhyate karma yatatamasam uchite. And that action performed in ignorance and delusion without consideration of future bondage or consequences, which inflicts injury and is impractical, is said to be action in the mode of ignorance. One has to give account of one's actions to the state or to the agents of the Supreme Lord called the Yamadutas. Irresponsible work is distraction because it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunctions. It is often based on violence and is distressing to other living entities. Such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. This is called illusion, and all such illusory work is a product of the mode of ignorance. In text 26, Mukta sango nahambari triditi utsaha samanditaha siddhya siddhyor nirvikara kartha satvika uchite. The worker who is free from all material attachments and false ego, who is enthusiastic and resolute, and who is indifferent to success or failure, is a worker in the mode of goodness. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental to the material modes of nature. He has no expectations for the result of the work entrusted to him because he is above false ego and pride. Still, he is always enthusiastic till the completion of such work. He does not worry about the distress undertaken. He is always enthusiastic. He does not care for success or failure. He is equal both in distress or happiness. Such a worker is situated in the mode of goodness. So, that's all the text. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments?
Ooh,
Yes.
I'm just wondering, there's a theme that comes up in a lot of religious discussions, which is free will. And so I'm wondering what is our free will in this, because we're not entirely we're not unlimited, we're very limited. We have limited free will, whereas Krishna has unlimited free will. We have limited free will. So I'm wondering, maybe if you could talk a little bit about that, because I often find, just like Duryodhana in the Srimad, in the Mahabharata, he's often using this excuse that, I'm the way I am because God wants me to be that way. It's just who I am. It's my nature. I can't control it. If God wanted me to be a different way, I would be that way. But I'm this way, so he wants me to be like that. So whatever I'm doing is actually under the sanction of the Supreme Lord, so it's okay. I can behave like a rascal. So I'm wondering, because like when we're acting, our actions are influenced by the modes of material nature, and our past sinful reactions, and those are there. And but yeah, could you just talk about that a little bit?
Free will. It's an interesting point because we live in America where everybody is taught that they're free, but hardly anybody questions what freedom actually is. Early on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha vimudhatma hankara kartahamati manyate. He says that people think themselves to be the doer, but in actuality, it's just the modes of material nature. So we think we're totally free and independent and we're going through life, but in actuality, we're just being driven by the modes of material nature. Now, I was thinking about this when we were leaving the park today. If you think like 100 years ago, before emails, before phones, before smartphones and YouTube, you were kind of limited to your little environment. You lived in a village, a tribe, a neighborhood, whatever have you. And that kind of where you were limited to, more or less, within the confines of that little environment. With the advent of modern technology now, I don't like my area, so I can go here, I can go there. I go scrolling on YouTube, and I'm listening to this genre of music, to this genre of music. I like this, I don't like that, and we're basically going on this endless search to see what we like, but we don't know who we are. So it's always, nothing will ever stick permanently. So, we have free will to act in that way, that we can act seeking out happiness. We are reading in one of the purports in Prabhupada, he made this nice point about faith. He basically said faith turns to action. I don't know where he said it. But you have a thought, an idea, and then that's in your mind, which is usually driven by your senses, and then your intelligence process it, but you have to have faith to actually act on that action. So in the material sphere, we're doing this, we're searching here, we're searching there, but it's just the modes of material nature. But that's free will in one sense, because we're free to do what we want to do. Go here, go there, search this, search that. But from a higher sense, that's not really free will at all, because we have karma, we've committed activity, so then karma is coming back to us. So then, I can go do this action or this activity in a different way, or however, but still a reaction from my past activity will come. So, it's limited. I remember thinking about this deeply before I came to the temple, and it seemed like our free will was like, you ever seen like an ant farm? It's like, yeah, you put the ants in this little class thing, and they can build the tunnels every which way they want, but it's limited. So they could do whatever they want in there, but it's limited. So they think they're totally independent. But, from just a little step out, a few feet out, you see that, they have no choice at all, from a higher perspective. So when it comes down to it, what is free will actually? We're all ultimately servants of Krishna. So we can either serve Krishna's energy or we can serve Krishna directly. So we can choose to turn to Krishna, or we can choose to turn away from Krishna. If we turn away from Krishna, we're going to serve him indirectly through his material energy, Maya, and we'll get kicked. It will be a tough time. But Krishna is so merciful, he allows us to do this. And, why would anybody in their right mind want to do this? This is the question, to exert their free will in this way. This is due to the false ego. Because, what is this? The false ego tells us that I'm independent, I'm important, I'm special, I'm in control. You can go much deeper into the subtleties of it. But, this false ego is this force that's keeping us from surrendering because we want to be in control. And it has us under this illusion that we have this free will within the material sphere, when in actuality, the only free will is by turning to Krishna and choosing to render service to him. And it's paradoxical, because you can go in the material world and be free to do whatever you want to do, to enjoy all the different shades of colors of the material energy, of the gunas that are shaped and formed in various ways that are being fluxed over the due course of time. Or we can choose to serve Krishna and surrender ourselves to Krishna, surrender our independence to Krishna. And when we surrender to Krishna, Krishna actually gives us freedom in a way. It's like a dog. You've ever had a dog? You've had a dog? What kind of dog? A Wookiee? Oh, a Yorkie. Okay. Well, anyways, that's not so important, but the point is, when you have a dog that is a nuisance and a rascal, what do you have to do with him? What? You have to keep him on a short leash. You have to keep him on a short leash. We go to the park, and I've seen some dogs, as soon as they get off the leash, they go running that way. It's us. We have our independence, quote unquote, in the material world, and we're like this dog. We're running for enjoyment there, and we almost get hit by a car. We're running over there, and unspeakable things happen. But the dog who's obedient and listens to its master, and adheres to his master's will without even having to be instructed, more or less, then the dog doesn't even need a leash, because the dog's just going to sit there and abide by his master. So similarly, when we turn to Krishna in that mood of respect and humble submissiveness, what need is there for a leash? And I'm just thinking of, like Narada Muni and other great devotees. They can travel throughout all the three worlds to the spiritual world and beyond because they're not bound by anything. So when we properly execute our free will in the only manner that's, leading to independence, more or less, it's the proper usage. Otherwise, we'll be under Maya, and Maya has the false ego gripped around us, having us thinking that we're free, but we're actually not free. So that's just a few thoughts. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I was just thinking while you're speaking that like the free will of the conditioned living entities in the material world is a lot like the free will of somebody who's on fire, like they are just like suffering, and then their intelligence is what choices do they have? They don't know what's happening, so they're at the mercy of somebody, the people around them put them out. So more or less, like the living entities in the material world, they don't necessarily have I'm just trying to understand, like they're being bitten by their sinful reactions and their karma and the different modes of material nature, so they're not really, I mean, what can we expect? That they're always engaging in all kinds of ignorant activities. So more or less, they're at the mercy of the devotees to come and kind of put that out, and then in spiritual life, actually, then they can exercise their free will, and more or less is that.
Well, the super soul is always sitting within the heart, trying to guide the jiva back to reality. But we're conditioned to turning away from from God. So yeah, usually there's some intervention that's needed. In Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Madhurya Kanamani, he scrutinizingly analyzes, where does bhakti come from? Like, how does one come from being conditioned and completely ignorant to becoming a devotee? It's not exactly what the whole topic was that he was talking about, but it can be applied to that point. But the main essence was, where does bhakti come from? And essentially, bhakti comes from bhakti. And the devotee acts in a way that shares mercy with others, that more or less Krishna comes under the control of his devotees, and due to the devotees' sincere desires to spread mercy and compassion, then bhakti spreads in that way. But bhakti is like it's an independent thing, and he actually analyzed it, because we say bhakti is independent, but what does it actually mean? And he broke it down where it's like, bhakti is not reliant upon any kind of pious activities. It's not reliant upon karma. So therefore, you can do any kind of good activities and pious things, and bhakti will never come. So when does it actually come in? How does it come? Because if you're saying that I do good and I'm pious, now I'm in a good place, now I'm able to hear from this person, so bhakti like enters my heart, then that's saying bhakti is subordinate to these pious things. So it's like somebody could be the most pious person in the world, and you present them a Bhagavad Gita, and that doesn't mean they're going to take to it. But somebody could be, as Prabhupada, I mean, in the Vedic literature, a dog eater, but in our culture, like a crackhead. You give him a Bhagavad Gita, he could take to it fully, wholeheartedly. And he's seemingly in a much worse position, than this person who's super pious. So, I mean, that's just a few thoughts of what I remember reading from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I don't know how relevant that is, but I find it interesting. Any other thoughts or comments? I guess. Later, it's already later.
How do we get more desires to serve Krishna instead of material desires or just like thoughtlessness?
One time, I was in Austin, Texas, and I asked His Grace Sankarshan Das Adhikari Prabhu, how can you maintain being enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness long term? And what did he say?
Be enthusiastic.
Yes, be enthusiastic. So in this same sense that bhakti comes from bhakti, it's like by rendering devotional service in an enthusiastic mood, then Krishna becomes pleased, and then more divine inspiration is manifested within our heart. More realizations, more purification, more everything that the soul, that our self is actually seeking. So the more that we give, the more impetus there is to give. But the more we hold back, then we always hold back. I've always heard from devotees say that Krishna doesn't see what we give to him. He sees what we hold back. And I was reading, I forget where I was reading. I think I was reading a book that quoted an excerpt of Prabhupada, and it was talking about that. I'm paraphrasing, but the essence was that spiritual life is not easygoing. And I'm super paraphrasing that. If we want to live an easygoing life, spiritual life, then this is Maya, essentially.
An easygoing life and an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness go ill together, I think was the sentence.
So Krishna is a person. And when we take up this process, what are we given? We're given the holy name, which we hear is non-different from Krishna. And this is the Yuga Dharma. So we're chanting the holy name. And when we get initiated and given our beads, our guru describes the 10 offenses to the holy name, generally. And these 10 offenses should be avoided. And, it's not just on our beads. We avoid the 10 offenses. Our whole life should be cultivated to avoid the 10 offenses, because the holy name isn't something that's just there when we have our beads. Okay, now I have 2 hours. It's the morning time. Let me hurry up and get this done so I could get to other activities that I actually like doing. Machine gun chanting. When we chant, one good merit we can understand if we are chanting, a not so terrible way you could say is that when we're chanting and we get to 16 rounds, we shouldn't feel like, I did it. I did it. Another 16 rounds. We should think, wow, I want to do more. I don't want to stop. If we feel that way, that we know like, okay, there's something there. There's some little bit of faint taste. So I'm giving kind of a long-winded discussion on this point, but we have to endeavor to follow the process and serve Krishna with our whole heart. And the more that we give to him, then the more he'll see the struggle and how we're actually trying to please him. And I've mentioned this before, is that, we've all had relationships in our life. I mean, so many lives, but in this life that we can remember, whether it be, with a mom, a girlfriend, a brother, whatever, you have a relationship. And when you really have affection for somebody, naturally you want to please them. And when you see them happy, you become more happy. Of course, we're materially contaminated and It's usually not so of a pure attempt, but it's still there, the perverted reflection. So similarly, Krishna is a person, and we're chanting this Maha Mantra, saying, Krishna, Krishna, please, please engage me in your service. Krishna, Krishna, please help me. Please save me. Krishna, I want you. I want you. But through our actions, our activities, does our consciousness actually mesh up with that? So I remember hearing Navina near to Prabhu, he was talking about book distribution, Sankirtan, specifically, because that's his seva, but it applies to everything in life, particularly bhakti yoga, because that is real life. That's what I mean to say. So we said when the external and the internal meet, this is when the magic happens. Because instead of me externally saying and acting like a pure devotee, I mean, it's so easy that, okay, we shave our head, we got the beads, I learn the words to the song, I come into the temple every day, Hare Krishna, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu. But like internally, we're still just like, I don't like this at all. I want to go do this. If I had freedom, I would totally run away and go to the woods and do my own thing, or go here and go there. And we maintain all these internal subtleties that want to put us in the center, or we want to create our own life, i.e., put Krishna in our little bubble rather than having Krishna put us in his bubble, his life. This is the false ego. And I was reading in what's this devotee? Devaki Mataji, her book about the false ego. I wasn't fortunate to be here when she came to visit, but this book is it's very nice. And one point she said that I really like was that the false ego, the bigger that it is, the harder it is to notice it's there. But the smaller it is, the easier it is to see. And then she gave the example, which I've heard before, but the way she tied it together was really nice, is that, if you have a white cloth, pure, clean white cloth, and then there's one little tiny drop of, sometimes I'm in the kitchen and I'm cutting beets. If I don't put on an apron or something, or take off my cloth, and you get one little speck there, and it's just like, so if you're wearing a white cloth, then one little speck, of dirt will show up. So similarly, when your consciousness is pure, any little contamination, any little deviation will be so much easier to be aware of. But when your consciousness is impure, it's very, very degraded, and you can't even see it. Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 3, Karma Yoga, Arjuna asked him, why do people commit sinful activities? And, they don't want to, when they know it's bad even. And what does Krishna say? He says it's due to lust. Lust, this is insatiable lust. And then he says that the living entities are covered over by different degrees of lust. And he gives different examples of how they're covered over. The smoke and fire, the mirror and dust, the embryo in the womb. So as we purify our consciousness, we should be more aware of these tiny little deviations and subtleties. It's so easy to do devotional service even, and really we're putting ourselves in the center, even though externally, we're putting Krishna in the center. But really, I want the credit. I want to lead this kirtan because I want to lead a rocking kirtan. I want to cook this thing, not because I'm thinking about serving Krishna, but this is what I want to taste. This is what I want to eat. So many subtle things. So to, really humbly approach Krishna and try to adopt his teachings, his method, his process. And, fortunately, he sends the guru as the external manifestation. So by humbly serving the Guru. I mean, we can know Krishna's pleased if we please the Guru. And I was just reading in the Bhagavatam, there was a shloka. I forget what it said, but it basically reiterated the same point that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, that, by pleasing the Guru, then one can know Krishna's pleased. But it said it added more context to it. I would have to find it. I know it's at the end of the last chapter of the 7th canto. Narada Muni is talking to Maharaj Yudhishthira. So anyways, that's a few thoughts, whirlwinds of points. But yeah. Any other last topics, comments, questions? Jagannath Prabhu.
I was just wondering what the difference is between enthusiasm and the mode of passion.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, what I've heard is that we perform service in the mode of passion versus versus being really enthusiastic, is that when we're really enthusiastic to serve Krishna genuinely, then there'll be more inspiration to serve Krishna. Whereas the mode of passion, we might get a service and we're super passionate about it, but then our enthusiasm to do the service generally diminishes. So, and what is the mode of passion? Krishna says it's born of unlimited desires. So, all these different actions, activities, movements, whereas Tamagun is inertia and Sattvagun is more balanced. So this is not devotional service. Devotional service to Lord Krishna is pure, it's transcendental, but we may be approaching it in a not so pure way because we're carrying our contaminated conditioning with the modes of material nature. So we may be given a new service and it's real fun and exciting for some time, but then, yeah, if our enthusiasm and everything wanes and starts to diminish, it's kind of a telltale sign that we're acting from this mode of passion. But I have seen shlokas that basically say that if we are serving Krishna from this mode of passion, then Krishna is supremely pure and will become purified, but you have to stick with the service. So it's not necessarily wrong. It's like you have to come from Tamagun to Rajagun, or you can come to Sattvagun. Sattvagun isn't even the goal. The goal is to from the Shuddha Sattva, it's the Vasudeva state, just transcendental platform. So, if one could passionately, lead like a rocking kirtan and go nonstop for 24 hours, do it. It's better than, not doing it. Arjuna asked Krishna, I was reading this 3rd chapter today. So in Karma Yoga, Krishna and Arjuna are basically discussing this, where Arjuna wants to go off to the forest and become a renunciate. And Krishna is basically telling him, like, everybody is helpless to act according to the modes of nature that they've acquired. So what will repression accomplish? Meaning, like, if I'm a really, really passionate person, I can't just come here and be like, okay, now I'm going to be a super sattvic monk and, only listen to this one kirtan and only chant this one melody because that's what we're supposed to do. When, like, really internally, I have this passionate nature where it's like, I want to, like, do something. No, you have to use that passionate nature in Krishna's service, because Arjuna, he's a warrior. He's fighting on a battlefield. This isn't such a sattvic thing. It requires lots of Rajagun because they're all fighting, bloodshed, battling. So Krishna doesn't tell him to go to the forest and become a sattvic monk. That's what Arjuna wanted to do. He said, no, engage your natural propensities in Krishna's service. Because he says, if you leave, you'll end up fighting anyway, because this is your nature. So back to Prabhu's question about free will. We think we're free, but we're really not free. We're bound by this false ego, and due to the false ego, we've been associating with this material nature. And because we think we're free, we're actually getting more and more gripped into the material nature, which is the gunas, which, the translation for guna, one translation is ropes. We're getting entangled in these ropes, so we're not free. So then we think, I'm me, I'm this person. I act this way, I think this way, I talk this way, this is me. This is not us. This is due to our association with the material energy and due to the false ego, we have a strong conception that we think this is me. But if more we analyze it and more we hear transcendental knowledge, we'll see that I never knew who I was. I don't know who I am now. And if I go forward, like without accepting the Shastra, I never will know who I am. Because I'm always just going to associate with, like I said, when we were leaving the park, I had this thought about, you guys came late, but, we're living in this village or this country and we kind of think we know who we are. But nowadays, like you can go on YouTube and like 1 week you're into electronic dance music. The next week you're into scuba diving. The next week, I'm a rock star. It's endless. Then you think you know who you are, but it's really just because you're associating with this and that, and you're interested. So you're stabbing through the dark, just saying, oh, I like this. All right, this is me. No, I don't like that anymore. I like this. No, this is me. And this goes for family, languages, religion. All as we are is Das and Das and Das, servant of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And the more that we identify with that, the more that we're connecting with reality, and the more life will actually be a breeze and pleasurable. I mean, not pleasurable like everything's going to be all jolly, but blissful. The soul will be connected with Krishna, the source of all bliss. So life will become purposeful. Is that okay? All right. Any last things? It's over time. All right. You want to say something? Just short. Anybody could leave if they want to.
I just wanted to reiterate the point that you're making on the definition of enthusiasm, because we should understand what the word means when we're hearing it being encouraged in Bhagavad Gita and the different readings. It's not like enthusiasm, this idea in America, or for some reason everyone has to have an artificial smile or this artificial elation, where all the time whenever anyone takes a picture, you can't just take a picture of a person as they are. Every photograph has to be like this artificial stretch your mouth as far as it goes thing. But Prabhupada explains in Nectar of Instruction, verse 3, endeavor, execute. Endeavor executed is the sound. Endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. The devotees find the correct means by which everything can be utilized in the service of the Lord. The execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So like Krishna said, enthusiasm means to act for Krishna. And how? With intelligence in Krishna consciousness. So within the principles that are described in the scriptures, acting for Krishna under the rules and
If you look up the etymology, the root origin of the word enthusiasm comes from a Latin word, I believe it's like entheos, which essentially means inspired by God. So the word enthusiasm actually comes from this, but like Rishi's saying, we take these words and, Kali Yuga's influence. Now like Americans, they really appreciate people who are passionate. I remember in my past, I would talk to people about something I was like really into, and like just because I was like really passionate and excited about it, they were like, wow, I really like that. But it's like, what did that get me? It like totally, it was horrible because nobody has transcendental vision to see where things are leading. So like this point's really good. This activity engaged with transcendental intelligence, which we are reading in one of these purports. Prabhupada was talking about faith, and faith, like action, comes from faith, because we think, okay, but I think this will be the best, so let me do this activity. And then also just connecting that one more time, that Krishna is a person, and we don't just do idle meditation. When there's a person, like I was saying, you have a loved one, you want to do something for them to please them. So if we think that Krishna's a person, let me do this for him. I don't want to wake up for Mangal Arti, but let me do it for him. I don't want to, study this book, but let me do it for him. I don't want to distribute this book and talk to this person, but let me do it for Krishna. Krishna will be pleased. And if we can't do that, then we think, let me do it for my Guru Dev. Not to say we should separate the two, but the point is, the Guru's here, and it's easier to meditate on. He's the outward manifestation of Krishna. All right, so it's over time. Thank you, everybody, for listening and participating and being yourselves. Jai Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita class.